With these speakers, we have come to the end of the session. I haven't received any questions in the chat box as yet, but I had a few questions in my mind, which I thought, and then you are welcome to come up with your own inputs on that. One question, Mr. Vyas, you were talking about replacement of the natural gas, the based heating systems with hydrogen in the European countries and the Western countries. Of course, the heating is not a very important requirement elsewhere, but certainly in Ladakh. Ladakh, it's a very important consideration. So, but here in Ladakh, we have to look at the primary the requirements, the energy profile, as Souvik was pointing out, the transport sector, the residential and commercial sector, the energy requirements are going to grow very high, because even now the Ladakh, the rural population is the largest, and the problem is the huge, the lack of grid. So therefore, ultimately, we have to look for something which is decentralized in nature, which can be maintained easily at the community level. So what do you think in terms of an integrated solution for the communities and the households in Ladakh, in the rural region of Ladakh, where they require heating, they require cooking, they require electricity? Do you think hydrogen can fit in there? And what kind of solution would you suggest for them?
Yes, so I think hydrogen can. So here's my thinking on this. So in rural communities, you may have a grid, but the grid will be weak, and that's just a factor of geography. Because if you are at the end of a long grid line, then you'll have a limited capacity, and you'll probably see higher grid instability or voltage fluctuations or frequency fluctuations. So this makes it difficult to use more electricity or to supply more electricity and extend the grid out towards a village or a town. One solution to that is having embedded generation local to the community. Okay, so solar, for example. Okay, but you still will face a lot of technical challenge to put that at the end of a weak grid line, and that's because of technical factors like solar electricity typically doesn't provide inertia, doesn't stabilize the voltage and frequency of the grid. You'll have grid capacity fluctuations. Okay, so it's not straightforward to suddenly put lots of renewable electricity generation at a rural point in a weak grid. This is why people start to discuss microgrid solutions. Okay, one opportunity is actually co-locate the solar with the electrolyzer. Okay, and together they actually provide renewable electricity and storage. Okay, so this is what we're actually doing on the farm, or want to pursue on the farm in Scotland. It's essentially that use case. It is how to supply local energy, how to displace transport and heating or cooking or other fuel uses locally when you're at the end of a weak grid. Okay, and so co-locating, in this case wind, but in Ladakh I could imagine solar, and co-locating that with an electrolyzer helps you manage those fluctuations, store the fuel locally, and it's much easier then to distribute through fueling stations or through standard hydrogen cylinder tanks or whatever you want. Mr. Rash, you're on mute.
Yes. Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Vyas. Mr. Sood, let me come back to you now. You had emphasized that the batteries behind every appliance, every equipment needs to have its own storage batteries, so as to be easily used. It can be used easily, and it can be replaced and easily. The two other speakers, or rather including Souvik, all three of them have talked of hydrogen. So what is your take on this in terms of transport? which is the primary, the sector that is growing fastest. And then obviously we have to come up with a new fleet of buses and cars and the transport systems based either on hydrogen or some other system or on electric battery system. What is your final take on this after having listened to these speakers?
So yeah, I mean, I think wonderful insights I gathered today about the Ladakh system. And yeah, there's a lot of food for thought in what the other speakers have said. But let me give some rejoinders back on some of the situation in Ladakh. Ladakh has, yes, been an area where there have been difficulties with the power system, but it is today 53,000 households have been electrified. At this moment, the number of count of households electrified out of a total population of 2.74 lakhs, which means that you're nearing 90% access of electricity. Yes, there is Nubra Valley, there is Ansar Valley, where we are still on standalone systems, and there is plan for electrifying. So Ladakh is not a system which has a very recent deployment of electricity. Second, I would say, is the custom and culture of Ladakh a little different from the West. They're very frugal people, and they would move to passive heating rather than the gas kind of heating, very heavy heating, which happen in the West. Of course, hotels, me and you, when we go, we will all have very high expectations of what heating we would need. And therefore, I see room for we're proposing heat pumps, but if heat pumps versus hydrogen is a better source, I'm willing to change my mind. But at this moment, we've evaluated all of the technologies, and at this moment today, especially in grid-connected areas, we can easily go for that kind of solution. In terms of augmentation, let me also explain. UK has a very active plan of augmentation of its network, and augmentation is possible at very, very low costs of the transmission system by doing what I call HTLS lines and high capacity conductors. That's something I sold in India because in my last job, and it is a very easy solution to put more power. If you've determined that the electrical route and the battery route is going to be economically the cheapest, because electricity down to 2 rupees a unit from solar and wind, and battery, which gives 80% of the energy back, is a very powerful economic combination. Now, if you have to beat it with IC engine, you put it through the hydrogen route and put it back through the IC engine, the efficiencies are, the physics doesn't work with it, and the economics will be a consequence of the physics. So, yes, of course, investment at scale will bring a lot of these costs down, but it will not change the physics and the economics of conversion. Will there be a room? Yes, for long-range buses, for buses which need very high density, for even commercial vehicles, which may not be able to tip the scale. I absolutely agree that that's an insight which is very, very useful. I learned about it today. But when I come to the residential sector today is either on firewood. It's a very frugal use. It's free, but when you have to pay for a commercial resource, be it electricity, be it LPG, be it any format, people become very, very conscious of the use and have a budget for their use. So what could we deliver in that budget is the question. And my proposal was with electric cook stoves, because their efficiencies are much higher than LPG-based cook stoves. You put half the bill for a poor household, and that is a very powerful. And you could do this without giving any subsidies. Today, you could. Today, if you look at the sector in Ladakh, yes, the costs are very high because power is coming from very far. and it is coming from a lot of sources. But look at the embedded potential of Ladakh. If India is giving power at 2 rupees now, Ladakh has 20% more potential than the rest of India. So the prices can drop even further.
Mr. Sood, we have to conclude now, so I think we have to move.
Yeah, I think I made a lot of the points, but let me conclude by saying that at this moment, if I was to do a large-scale conversion program, battery-based systems, or yes, you need to store behind the meter. If there is a solution to store behind the meter which meets the battery cost, we would change our religion, and we would go with that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Since we have just about 5 minutes left, and before concluding, I would like to go back to Mr. Panda for that one final question on how does he see the cost, the economics of the hydrogen-based buses and the transport system which he was talking about. NTPC is taking up pilots in this. So how do you foresee the future here, Mr. Panda, in 1 minute?
So what easy response would be, the more the scale, the prices should come down, number one. The way electrolyzers technology is improving, the cost should be down. And third, most importantly, when hydrogen buses, electrolyzers are made in India, the cost is going to be lower than 40% of the present cost. So that would make it very much feasible.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Let me thank all the panelists once again for the excellent insights, outstanding presentations, and we have had a very rich discussion. Souvik, I'm sorry I cannot come back to you for the final question, but you have summarized in a way, you have pointed to the way forward, that we need a multi-sectoral strategy, looking at each specific sector and its specific needs. And perhaps we will have to look at a combination of battery-based solutions and hydrogen-based solutions in the short term. But ultimately, we have to move towards a hydrogen-based economy. That is the sense that I'm getting from the messages which all the panelists have put forward. And with the rising scale, the cost will certainly fall down. But it's important that the major investors get into act, and the government supports this not only through some kind of a regulatory incentives or regulatory interventions, but creates the right market conditions. And I think for a region like Ladakh, those conditions do exist, because the delivery costs are extremely high. We already impose a very high level of taxes on the diesel and petrol. So I think we are moving in that direction. That sense already exists, and the conditions are right for us to take this to the logical conclusion in Ladakh. And we will certainly succeed with the government backing it up, with the Prime Minister himself having supported this kind of vision. So thank you very much once again, all the panelists, and we do look forward to a bright future for Ladakh. And I'm sure you will contribute to this in your own way. Thanks once again.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Real privilege to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.